Alea iacta est, the die is cast. Gaius Julius Caesar. This is probably one, if not the most famous Latin saying that you can hear on TV, in games, or read in books. But if you have ever played Total War, and especially Rome, you know that this is just one of the multitude of proverbs and sayings you can read in this game. Most of them being from Rome, but some from ancient Greece and even far off China, like "He who knows when he can fight, and when he cannot, will be victorious" by Sun Tzu. I will go through quite a number of these sayings, explain some of the more obscure ones, and remind you of the most famous ones, like fortes fortuna adiuvat, which translates to "fortune favors the brave." Even my elementary school friends, who had very low grades and didn't even know who they were quoting, would speak this just before a test, as if bravery could help them do algebra or name the highest peaks of Alps. The list of famous generals, philosophers, writers, and tacticians who are attributed with speaking these lines is a long one. You can find the whole list and the quotes at a fan page I will link in the description. There are Homer, Sun Tzu, Plato, Cicero, Gaius Julius Caesar, but also known military maxims like divide and conquer or march divided and fight concentrated. As you can see, the loading screens which feature these sayings and proverbs also have gameplay tips on them. But more importantly, the art on these screens is very different to the art of the original loading screens in Total War Rome. It had a mix of red and black art with gold and silver letters. To be perfectly honest, those seem much more artful to me than the backgrounds in the remastered version. But that is just me. And as Plutarch, a Greek philosopher, wrote, extraordinary reigns pretty generally fall after great battles, meaning that after witnessing a great event, we are more likely to attribute greatness to even mundane things. So you could say here that because I love original Rome so much, I think that everything in it is better than it might actually be. Now, if you have been enjoying this video so far, please consider liking it and commenting your favorite quotes. And if you want to watch more videos like this, subscribe and click on that yellow bell icon to get notified when I post again. Now let us pick up the pace, as there are many more of these I want to go through, so I will start with an easy one by Hermocrates of Syracuse. When there is mutual fear, men think twice before they make aggression upon one another. Basically, two equally strong opponents are far less likely to do battle because they do not know that they will win beforehand. Today's assured mutual destruction between nuclear superpowers is a great example of this. Necessity knows no law except to conquer. Publius Sirius was the Latin writer and a Syrian by birth. You will be surprised to know he is also attributed with "the end justifies the means" and "honor among thieves." Learn to obey before you command. Solon of Athens means that a leader must be first a common soldier and rise through the ranks. He warned of noblemen who led armies but had absolutely no experience in military matters or the empathy for the common soldier. The proper arts of a general are judgment and prudence, attributed to Tacitus, a famous historian and senator of the Roman Empire. Prudence is another word for cautiousness. Wars are dread of mothers, by Quintus Horatius Flaccus, better known as Horace, who was a famous poet from ancient Rome. I do not think this one needs any explanation. Verus, give me back my legions! This was uttered by Augustus Caesar after the defeat and annihilation of Verus' column in Tederburg Forest, where he lost so many soldiers that he knew he had just lost the grip on the Germanic peoples. Brave men are a city's strongest tower of defense. Alcaeus of Mytilene was a lyric poet from the Greek island of Lesbos. The direct meaning of this is that there are no fortifications which can substitute steadfast soldiers. Silent enim legers inter arma, which translates to "laws are silent in times of war." This is attributed to Marcus Tullius Cicero, a Roman statesman and philosopher who tried to uphold republican principles during the political crisis which led to the establishment of the Roman Empire. His thoughts continue to be proven true throughout the ages and wars. In war, truth is the first casualty. Aeschylus, a Greek author often described as the father of tragedy. Simply put and direct, it means that you will never find honesty or know the truth of what is going on the battlefield or in a war-torn country around it, leading to what we know today as war crimes. Hannibal knew how to gain a victory, but not how to use it. These words come from Maharabal, a Numidian army commander in charge of cavalry under Hannibal and his second in command during the Second Punic War. He believed that Hannibal was making a mistake by not marching directly to Rome after defeating its legions at the Battle of Cannae, which is the most famous example of the pincer movement. A good general not only sees the way to victory, he also knows when victory is impossible. Polybius, a famous historian from ancient Greece who was known for his written works on the history of Rome. Basically, do not let your ego blind you and do not go headfirst through a wall. A collision at sea can ruin your entire day. This is falsely attributed to Thucydides, who was a famous historian, philosopher, and a general from ancient Greece. But this was actually the work of Commander W.B. Bill Hyler, a prankster at the Naval War College in 1960, who wrote and made up the connection to Thucydides. It is a bad plan that cannot be altered. Polybius Syrus, who was already mentioned. If spoken in a military setting, it means that you have to have flexibility to change your plans mid-execution to adapt to the changing circumstances on the battlefield. Who was the first that forged the deadly blade? Of a rugged steel his savage soul was made. Tibullus, a Latin poet. This is a part of a poem he wrote, and it talks about the dark places in our own souls from where we have the capacity for violence and weapon making. It is much more meta than most of the quotes. Only the dead have seen the end of the war. Plato, the Athenian philosopher. He studied under Socrates, and his most famous student was Aristotle himself. The meaning of this one is well understood and refers to the belief that as long as there are humans, there will be wars, because we invented war. An echo of this can be found in the acclaimed Fallout franchise, with the war never changes quote. Fastest et ab hoste docere. It is right to learn even from the enemy. This is attributed to Publius Ovidius Naso, a Roman poet who lived during the reign of Augustus and whose meaning needs no interpretation. To a good general, luck is important. Titus Livius Patavinus, known as Livy, who was a famous Roman historian, and through his writings, his conclusion was that luck in battles can change the outcome as readily as experience, bravery, or intelligence. If a man does not strike first, he will be struck first. This is thought to be said by Athenagoras of Syracuse, who lived during the Peloponnesian War. Beyond the undeniable logic of it, it can be used as an excuse for preemptive strikes or vigilant defensive preparations. Quick decisions are unsafe decisions. Sophocles, a famous playwright from ancient Greece who is known for his tragedies. At least in this, he was clear-cut. Planning trumps rash actions. War, as the saying goes, is full of false alarms. Aristotle, which is similar to a saying I know from my own culture, which translates to English as, "In fear, eyes grow large," both having the meaning that fear makes us jumpy. Timidi mater non flet, a coward's mother does not weep, is a Latin proverb which can double for an insult. In our day and age, it would mean that a deserter won't give his mother cause for tears. The fortunes of war are always doubtful. Seneca. If taken by face value, it tells us not to rely on luck in times of war. If we go a bit deeper, it can also mean that those who gain fortunes during war times might actually be criminals. "Let them hate us as long as they fear us" is attributed to Caligula, the third Roman emperor, who by some accounts became a tyrant and a madman after his close call with death. Basically, he didn't care about being loved as long as his power is undisputed. Another of my favorite quotes is certainly this: "The cruelty of war makes for peace." Polybius Syrus. He makes a great point about the fact that the value of peace is most appreciated by those who have witnessed firsthand the atrocities people commit in war to each other. "Victory loves prudence" is another Latin proverb which tells anyone who wants to be victorious that they first need to be prepared for anything. A general is not easily overcome who can form a true judgment of his own and the enemy's forces. Funnily enough, this one is by Gaius, a writer of the later Roman Empire and not some battlefield commander. It almost sounds like one of those quotes by Sun Tzu, and it refers to the ability of a general to be objective. "The valiant profit more their country than the finest clever speakers." Plautus tells us, of course, in military terms, that a country will have far more use of its valiant citizens than the citizens who only do battle with their words. But in my opinion, we should strive to make this the opposite in today's world. In war, we must always leave room for strokes of fortune and accidents that cannot be foreseen. This is attributed to Polybius, who I already mentioned, and he talks about planning which has to account for both lucky and unlucky happenstances which we should expect to happen in war. Conquered, we conquer. Plautus. This one requires knowing more about the historical context in which it was spoken. The conquered here are the peoples of different city-states in the Italian peninsula who lived free until Rome, a city-state itself, conquered them. The "we conquer" part means that those now subjugated peoples fight in Rome's armies and conquer other nations for the glory of Rome. Ha, those generals! They are numerous but not good for much. By author Aristophanes isn't as much a military comment but a social one. It refers to a whole new social caste of generals who gain power and influence through their successes on the battlefield, but have contributed nothing to the culture of the society they have safeguarded. There is some truth in this, but it is not universal. To lead untrained people to war is to throw them away, is a saying from Confucius, a Chinese philosopher and politician who detested mass draftings and forcing simple peasants into military service. We would call them cannon fodder today, and Confucius publicly spoke against such actions. Because there are many more of these that I would like to cover, but I know there is a limit to my viewers' patience, I will continue the rest in a follow-up video. I hope you have enjoyed this one, and I will leave you with this Greek proverb. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!
Erastus necessitas.